Thank you very much, Chair. And thank you to you, Mr. Jakes, and your colleagues for joining us here again today. It's good to see you in just one short week since your previous appearance. I do appreciate the report that you tabled and look forward to the answers that you and your team are going to provide today. In Figure 1 of your report, you no longer predict the debt-to-GDP ratio improving. In fact, it would appear that what was once a fiscal anchor has now been abandoned by this Prime Minister and his government, as your report indicates the debt-to-GDP increasing to a clearly alarming rate of 42.5%. So my questions are these. Is this sustainable? At what point does it hit a critical point? And should Canadians be concerned?
Can I jump in?
Yes, absolutely.
Still working out the kinks. With respect to, thank you for your question. To answer, I think, the most important part of the question first, I think everybody should be concerned. My jokes aside, it's a really serious day, right? This is the first time in 30 years that we've tabled an economic and fiscal outlook where the fiscal anchor of the general and probably most important fiscal anchor for any government is a declining or at least stable debt-to-GDP ratio. And this is the first time in 30 years that I've seen one in which that ratio is going up over time. So that's definitely a cause for concern. Certainly on our end, we're hoping and certainly expecting the government, as part of Budget 2025, to clearly indicate what the government plans to do to address this and potentially address this problem, because it's certainly not sustainable.
Thank you. So in response to your last statement, again, under the current leadership, this government is set to worsen the outlook of our debt. Have you had any indication that it is going to change course?
Well, the government has indicated that they're planning on tabling a budget on November 4th. I think certainly looking at the public statements of the Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, these numbers probably, I don't think they come as a surprise to them. Some of the language that the Prime Minister has certainly used has been very strong with respect to the economic and fiscal challenges that are facing the country right now. And again, we look forward to seeing the government's plan to manage or address the challenges that Canada faces. As the Parliamentary Budget Office, and as we discussed last week, our job is to set the table for parliamentarians, to present numbers to them. So as parliamentarians, you're well prepared to engage in thoughtful and meaningful discussion regarding how this projection hopefully will not come to pass.
Thank you. In your opening statements, you spoke to the fact that this outlook does not include incremental measures to achieve the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or in other words, our commitments to NATO. And I'm wondering if you would be able to comment on what other spending that may have been included in the Liberal platform is not included in your numbers.
Thank you for your question. The last time that I've looked, there's about 20 billion or so in spending that has not yet been included in our outlook from the Liberal platforms, if it does come to pass. So we will see on November 4th what they will announce and what they don't announce, but roughly that is what's not included in our outlook right now.
Thank you. So last week we talked about the government looking to change the rules for accounting and splitting out capital and operating, and how they may choose to define those things. And I can't find a rationale from the government on why they would overturn a long history of accounting practice with the budget. Can you explain why the Liberals are separating the capital and operating budgets, and why can't they demonstrate progress in the economy without making these changes?
I would note that the government up to this point has indicated that they're planning on maintaining the existing presentation of data, so the traditional measures of debt and deficit that you see in the public accounts that everyone is used to, in addition to presenting this new framework of splitting the operating and capital budgets, or like day-to-day spending plus some sort of investment. It's an approach that happens in other jurisdictions. To the best of my knowledge, pretty much every Canadian province has an operating budget, a standard budget, plus an investment budget. As we discussed last week, the City of Toronto does the same thing. To the extent that it can be additive and helps parliamentarians understand that potentially more money needs to be borrowed over the short term in order to make investments to transition to longer-term sustainable economic growth, potentially at a higher level, that it could potentially be useful. Going back to the point
sorry,
that
I have to cut you off there. We're past our time, but perhaps we can get back to it next round.
Bien, à 9 heures, Monsieur le Président, quand j'ai reçu.
This morning at 9 a.m. when I received the document, I was able to read the whole thing attentively, and that's why I have very specific questions. And I have quite a number. Thank you, Chair. My first question. What is worrying? Is it most worrying? Is it the increase in the debt-to-GDP ratio or the lack of a specific budget plan?
pour moi, je pense que
In my view, it's the increase in the debt-to-GDP ratio. On November 4th, there will be a plan, according to the Government of Canada. But in all honesty, it was clear even before we published our figures that there's a tremendous challenge in Canada, but seeing the figures and the increase in the debt as a percentage of our economy, that was quite stupefying. So now we have a snapshot of how things stand now. The Prime Minister was sold to us as an international banker, but do you believe that he is being sufficiently serious about the economic and budgetary situation? I'm not a psychologist. As an interim parliamentary budget officer, I'm not well placed to talk about the psychological state of the Prime Minister of Canada. The deficit includes new spending that was in the Liberal Party's campaign. Your projection does not include those. No. What if we were to include them? I'm thinking about the defense budget and the promised increase to NATO's 5%. So what will the debt-to-GDP ratio be then? I don't think we calculated that, but we might be able to prepare some figures and provide them to the committee within a few days. What I'm saying is that spending is going up, and the federal budget's trajectory is concerning. If we were to look at an analogy, it's like a family seeing its income go down, but that family isn't adjusting its spending accordingly. Yes, that's a good analogy, I believe. We're waiting to see the budget on November 4th. So if we look at the next decade, if public finances were not restructured, if there was no plan for that, what would the consequences be for Canada? Well, I think we have used the word significant, major in our report. Not enviable in the long term, not sustainable in the long term. That's what's shocking. And this is why we are waiting to see with interest what Canada will do to rectify that projection. Well, the IMF talks about 3 very clear budget rules. The first is that a budget should be clear, should be simple, and should not be manipulated by the government. In those 3, what we can call rules, what would Canada's score be, or grade? What grade would you give Canada on that? I couldn't really say because, well, last week the Prime Minister did provide some clarification on some of Canada's financial and budget issues. Last week did show some progress, but things are not yet clear. I'd give it a C at the moment. I'd give it a grade of C. But, you know, it's like for my children. It's a C for now, but there will be chances to bring that grade up in the coming weeks and months. For my next question, I'd like to know what the medium-term consequences on taxpayers might be, given how things stand. I'll come back to this. My time is up. Thank you. See, I'm keeping to my time. 25 seconds. Right. So what would those repercussions be? Clearly, revenue will have to go up, and perhaps at the same time, spending will have to go down. The current numbers aren't sustainable. And I imagine that people at the Department of Finance are well aware of that. So I believe the November 4th budget will show that changes are to come. Thank you. Thank you.